Well, good morning, everybody. I wanted to start off today by doing a quick recap of what this month has given us so far, because we are only about a week away from the beginning of meteorological spring and little less than a month away from the equinox. So if anything is going to systematically shift around in this pattern, we need to start discussing it now. So I'm going to build this into kind of two narratives, one today on Friday and then one on Monday, that kind of just takes whatever I've got now and kind of gives my new spring outlook. But it's always good to get an accounting of where we've been. And the map I've been showing you here is since the beginning of February through February 22nd, our precipitation ranks by climate district. There's a lot about this map that I showed earlier this week that really just kind of screams El Nino February. It's not a perfect match, but this Ohio River Valley dryness, the New England dryness, part of the dryness in the mid-Atlantic, that is common when we have an El Nino in February. The better precipitation in parts of the western high plains, again, you know this is an area I'm worried about for summer, but just to see the moisture there now is pretty critical. And a lot of this has been snow at times, butting up against the front range of the Rockies. California has taken on a lot of moisture in the month of February to add to what it had back in January. And as a result, the state is drought free. And on top of that, reservoirs are generally sitting between 100 and 130% of their historical averages. And there's quite a bit of snow in the mountains. Now, the Pacific Northwest, the northern tier of the United States, these are areas we're waiting to see if the change in the pattern that we're going to experience here soon can start to get moisture back into those areas. I've got kind of a new update on that in a few moments. But continuing on this kind of accounting of where we are, this is our latest root zone soil moisture map. So this goes down to 100 centimeters or 40 inches. And just a couple of things to take note of here. Because of how dry we've been at times throughout February, these numbers are really beginning to drop off again, especially in this part of the Ohio River Valley. Now, I have gotten a few reports from some folks that say that their tile is running in Illinois, but I do think that this map, while I think it's a fantastic representation overall of our soil moisture percentile, remember it's comparing it to historical averages. And I just want to make a note that there are places I've visited in the last week right in through this area where the soil looks and feels pretty darn hard and dry, and just something to think about. Yesterday I was in North Carolina. I got to talk to some of the growers that were in this area, and they certainly confirmed that they've been missing a lot of the precipitation. And for the whole East Coast, this has really been the coastal areas. This has been one of those spots that just has been missed. And we want to ask if that's going to get filled in, because on the newest drought monitor, that area was expanded in North Carolina. Now, as it stands, that is just an abnormally dry area. But remember, the drought monitor takes a long time to adjust to drought issues. So in other words, it's a cumulative, longer-term statistic. We need to make sure that we use it as such. It is one of the most valuable tools we have in agriculture, but I just want to make sure that it's being used correctly. Overall, compared to last fall, we have seen a pretty sizable drop in drought area, about 25% overall since last fall, reduction in drought area. And the biggest changes have been down here in parts of the lower Mississippi River Valley. And speaking of that area, I just want to show you that the current Mississippi River gauge from the USGS at Memphis is about 15 feet above low stage. And it's kind of doing the things we anticipated, right? After the major jump up, we just expected it to kind of go in this direction and kind of oscillate, with each weather system that rolls through in its depth. But the good news is the river is up. There's a lot of concern about the drought that is still tucked away in the Midwest, and I've seen the drought monitor increase the size of drought in parts of Iowa. There's been a little bit of reduction this winter in Iowa, but it's not gone away. But it's been increasing in parts of Wisconsin, Michigan, and Minnesota, as well as this part of the northern Rockies. And the question is, if spring rains don't continue to eat away at the deficits in soil moisture, this is going to be an area that's going to be very vulnerable going into 2024. No surprises in what I said there. So we're going to continue to monitor this and just see how these things evolve and change as a function of time going forward. One of the bigger issues is the snow this year. And if you look at it, the season-to-date percent of normal snowfall, I believe there's 16 years of data that's been collected by here, the NOHRSC, and that's what I use to make my climatology, in other words, what I'm comparing against. And I believe in terms of snow, total snow, this might be the second kind of least snowiest winter. And now this is not, please don't draw an analogy to this or pull this out as an analog year, but I believe I'll have to go back and look at this weekend, but I believe that the least snowiest is the 11-12 year. And just, it is what it is. let's not take it any farther than that at this point, but this is what you've got in terms of season-to-date snowfall as a percent of normal. Now, one of the bigger differences, if we kind of do a quick comparison between where we are this year and where we were a year ago, is it not only throughout much of the West, but it's the whole northern tier of the United States. At this point in February a year ago, we had some places up here with 3 to, in some locations, up to 9 inches of liquid in the snow. So this is snow water equivalent. So this is this year, and this is a year ago. And of course, we know why we don't have this same setup this year. We've had a very weak and almost non-existent polar jet in 2024. And on top of that, we've been very mild. So since the beginning of February, every location that you see here that's got the 1 in it would be the new warmest February on record. Now, there is some colder air that's coming into this section of the country today, tomorrow, and into early Sunday. And then we do have colder air continuing to hit parts of the West as we progress through the end of this month and start March. But what I will be very, very keen on discussing with you in every video is if we take all of the really cold air that is locked into Alaska right now and displace it. If that comes out and starts to push across the country and makes a deep dive, even if it's only for a day, because of how mild things have been, there's been a lot of places that have made a huge jump start on the 2024 growing season. I'm thinking about a grower I met yesterday in North Carolina who's talking about his strawberries that are already in bloom. And if we had a massive cold event that comes through, that whole operation he has would be jeopardized. And that's just one example. You go all the way across the South where things are going pretty rapidly right now, including Texas, where not only is corn out, but already emerged, corn planted, but already out and emerged. We have issues here that any sense of cold air coming through that could drop temperatures down there below 32. I mean, that's all it's going to take for some of these crops. We just have to be talking about it. So every video, we're going to hit on that. All right, from there, west, let's take a look at the snowpack. This map shows you through February 22nd what our percent, our basin average snow water equivalent percent is. In other words, where are we on the year? And we're looking here a lot at the Great Basin, parts of the Sierra Nevada, parts of the Central Rockies looking pretty good. The issue of the lack of good snow up here is going to be worked against in the upcoming pattern. We're going to look at some great snows coming into the Sierra Nevada. The Cascades. I do not know why I have got those two mountain chains backwards so many times this winter. Forgive me for that. I know my mountains, okay? So we'll be watching for that change coming here soon. But I do want to show you that this is where we started off the year. This is January 1st of this year, and this is where we currently are. So we've been making the right kind of recovery. We just need to make sure we get that final push to get things looking, much better. And I want to show you, just for completeness here, where things stood a year ago at this time. So last year, one of our best snow years throughout the western mountain ranges in a very long time. And this is where things stood a year ago on February 22nd. All right, let's get into what's going on right now. Sun's trying to rise across the East Coast. Take you back to yesterday. It's just amazing to be able to see all of the snow-free ground in this area. And we did have some pretty nasty storms that rolled through parts of the Midwest. There was some hail up in Illinois, also down here in Missouri, kind of down the Mississippi Valley with some of these storms. And this frontal boundary is trying to push east in the overnight hours into this morning. I was out there looking at just my hail map. I make this using the MRMS data, and it just kind of shows where in the last 24 hours we did see some of that hail. So you can see Illinois, Indiana, parts of Missouri, Kentucky, down into Arkansas, and a few of these places put down some relatively large hail and did some local damage in these areas. And because we're now progressing toward our severe weather season, that's not just along the south and the mid-south, in the southeast, but starting to move back into the Midwest, I just want to bring you up to date on some stats. So if you're curious right now, we are, in terms of wind accounts, so number of wind reports, through 2024, we've had 616. The average is 449, so we're a little bit above average, and that was primarily due to an event way back here in early January. If we flip over to the hail reports, if I can get that to show up, there we go. 154 hail reports so far this year. 134 is the average, so we're a bit ahead on hail. You can kind of just see, if you want to pause the video or even go to this website, spc.noaa.gov/WCM. You can see all of the data here. And on tornadoes, the last one I want to show you, we've had 70 so far. Average would be 88 when you look at the last few years. But remember, when we look at this average, this includes last year, which had 192 through this point, and also includes 2020 with 141 and 2017 with 179. So honestly, we would say that this year is starting off on the lower side of the distribution with respect to tornado reports, but certainly wind and hail have been an issue as well. Okay, this morning, 5:25 a.m., what are we watching? Changes here. Okay, this is where the polar jet is about to enter North America, and it's going to combine with a low that is way off the California coast. And that's going to just rip off a storm system in the midsection of the country next week that we have to give you the latest updates on. But the winds coming off the mountains, the winter storm watches that are in the Cascade Mountains, parts of the Northern Rockies, that's going to be top of mind. Now, as this system progresses, what ends up getting into the midsection of the country is going to be very hard today to tell you the timing of. And what I don't know about this change in the pattern is I don't understand the speed of it. That's where I'm struggling. So here are the features. Let's start off with the closer event. This trough right here, coming off the Hudson Bay, is going to drop a front slowly over the next 36 hours right down through the Great Lakes into the southeast. And it's going to push up against the Appalachian Mountains. It's going to bring some snow. So there's going to be some colder air, some snow in the Ohio River Valley pushing up against the Appalachian Mountains when it gets here. After that, here is the polar jet coming into British Columbia. Here's the low that is sitting off the California coast I mentioned. And all of this starts to work together coming over the Rocky Mountains to produce a pretty potent system, really beginning Monday, but racing across the country Tuesday, Wednesday, Thursday. That's it. These are the two things we're keeping an eye on. After that, the atmosphere wants to just continue to rebuild in this area. Deeper troughs of low pressure. They're going to send out at least two more spring/winter type storm systems that are going to roll through the country. So we need to start looking at them in the models. High-res NAM first. We're going to pick this up early this morning on Friday. So here's some of the rain moving across parts of the Mid-Atlantic, the Carolinas, all the way down to the southeast. This is from the storm system that hit the Midwest yesterday. As we play through the rest of the day, bringing in some much-needed rain to parts of Virginia and North Carolina, South Carolina, where you saw earlier things were drier. But by midday, we're going to start to see some snow here on the front that's diving down out of Ontario. So by this afternoon, we'll watch southern Wisconsin, northern Illinois. We're going to see this spread all along this area into Indiana, possibly by tonight, and move through Indiana into Ohio in the overnight hours tonight. This has been a pretty robust forecast. If I had to kind of pin down an area, I'd say, I don't know, somewhere in through this corridor, maybe to be a bit more precise, somewhere like that, I think is where we're going to get our biggest snows out of this. How much? It's not much. I don't think it's, there might be a spot that just luckily grabs 4 inches of snow out of this, but a lot of places are going to get a good dusting to maybe an inch or two out of it. Like I said, it presses up on Saturday against the Appalachian Mountains here, the Blue Ridge Mountains, comes across North Carolina with some scattered colder rain as we work our way through Saturday and get out there towards Sunday. Now you can see behind it, there's another front going over the Great Lakes that's going to move through Ontario into Quebec. But then all of our attention is going to come back over here to the Pacific Northwest once we get into Sunday. And here's why. I've shown you all week the European model, but let's look at the GFS just as another example of this. And I'll tell you in a moment why I'm curious about the GFS evolution of this system. So into Saturday and Sunday, here we go. There's the trough and the polar branch digging. Here is the subtropical branch of the jet stream with the cutoff low engaging. In other words, getting caught up in the flow and pulled out. So by Monday noon, getting into Tuesday noon, this is what we're keeping an eye on. Polar branch making the hard turn. Subtropical branch supplying the speed. See that? Now, the phasing of these two waves is everything. If this gets too far out ahead, the system crumbles. It won't do what we're all worried about it doing. If that gets too far out ahead of the deeper trough, this produces this wide open low, not a tightly closed low, but a wide open low that just rips on off to the east and has no support from the polar side of it. And you say, well, what does that mean? Well, we need there to be a lot of what we call forcing, strong fronts, combined dynamics of the subtropic and the polar branches of the jet to really enhance the upper level divergence, which we talked about yesterday. If these two things come out of phase and they miss one another, then this event we're worried about for next Tuesday, Wednesday, it becomes a non-event. I'll just be honest with you. Now, the models aren't doing that yet. They're leaving them together. See this? This is next Wednesday morning, Wednesday afternoon, and evening. And they've got them in phase working together, which is why next Tuesday, Wednesday in the models, we're quite concerned about the size and strength of this low, its severe weather aspect, and even the snow on the backside. That is what it looks like when you get the subtropical jet and the polar jet teaming up together to produce a pretty sizable system to roll across the U.S. By Thursday, it's in New England, and then behind it, the atmosphere does it again. You can see another deep trough coming out of the Gulf of Alaska by Saturday. The subtropical jet's to its south. A little bit different phasing, but there's still a pretty potent low. Now, to be honest, I like it that the polar jet is providing its own jet streak at the base of the trough for this system this weekend. This is like around the 3rd after it comes through the west. Why do I like that? Well, that means this system has a chance of being a bit slower. And if it's slower, we start to make a better pull on this moisture, bringing it back into the drier plains. And that system does not accelerate out. Look at that. See how it even closes itself off? Now, we are way out here. 270 hours in a forecast. I got to see if there's Ensemble support for that. But that will be a fun one to watch around the 3rd and the 4th. And I know I'm using a single operational run. I don't think the atmosphere's done. I think around the 7th, 8th, it does it again. So that means we've got a system on the 27th, 28th, 29th. We then wait. The next one comes in on the 2nd, 3rd, 4th. There that one is. And then we have another one, it looks like, on the 7th, 8th, and 9th. This is what March does. These are March lions, as we call them, right? So looking back at the metrics we use to assess severe weather, I just want to make a point that starting on noon next Tuesday, the atmosphere is starting to open up a corridor in through here, such that by 6 p.m. we're going to be very aware of the severe weather. That then moves the next day toward the south and east. This is noon on Wednesday of next week. We'll just have to see how quickly this system moves through to see if that area is still under the gun. But the Storm Prediction Center says next Tuesday's risk stretches again from parts of the Red River of the south all the way up here to lower Michigan. This whole area in between having the risk. And day 6, it's over here in parts of the Mid-South, Tennessee, Kentucky, and then the northern parts of Georgia, Alabama, Mississippi, right along the river as well. So that's the newest updates. When we get into next week, these will be the day 2, day 3 forecasts. We'll have a much more accurate representation of what's going on. But let's go from there and compare the models. GFS left, European right. Now, when you watch this, you're going to go, Eric, I don't see this highly amplified system with all the support you keep mentioning. So here we are playing through Saturday, getting into Sunday. There's that second wave that moves over Ontario and Quebec, and then here. This is on Sunday evening where this is coming into British Columbia and the Pacific Northwest. So here we are Monday morning, Monday midday, and then Monday evening. A lot of snow. I'll show you how much in a moment. This then comes out here by Tuesday morning. This is Tuesday midday and then Tuesday evening. Now remember, this is the time frame over which we're going to keep an eye on this area. And you're going, I don't see anything in the model. And you don't see it here either. So the models right now, as they try to develop this low, don't yet fully have the phasing right, I think. And that's why I made that point a few moments ago. So you don't see them strongly forcing out a bunch of precip just yet in this area, but it will show up. There will be snow on the backside of this as well, enough high pressure to really fill this in with a brief shot at some colder air. This is Tuesday night, Wednesday morning. This is early in the morning on Wednesday, getting to Wednesday midday. Now notice the GFS, slower progression, heavy rain here. I'm going to show you that difference in a second. European kicks this system out pretty quickly toward New England. Well, then what happens is the next system comes into the northwest. But this is 150 hours from now, next Wednesday night, Thursday morning. Look at the difference between the GFS and the European. Now you know that I often tell you that the European is the slower model. Not in this case. The GFS is much slower, and we got to watch this trend all weekend. That's just a week out, and the models already don't agree. They at least have the next system in the northwest, and that one comes diving down Thursday into Friday of next week, and then rips off another system at some point. I still think it's the 2nd, 3rd, 4th in the midsection of the country. By the way, let's see here. This is next Thursday night to Friday morning. Look at the differences in the model. GFS plants a big high pressure cell there. Europeans like, no, next system coming out. all subtropical driven. So I need you to know that we look at these models and I only trust them right now about 5 days out. I don't trust them any far beyond that. That's why we use the ensembles. You're going to see what that effect does right here. This is the European model solution through the next 7 days. So right there, we're going to pause it. Here's the GFS over the same time period. Now, if we look at that and compare it, so that's a 7-day forecast. Look how much wetter the GFS is here with the slower system. That's the difference. GFS is also bigger snows in the Sierra Nevada. European model, where these colors show up, that's where the European model is wetter. So there you go. That's already the differences we're getting in the models just with this setup for next week. And what's funny is the skill scores right now. Let me just show you these skill scores from Ryan Maui. Are we about to just see these plummet again like they've done in the past? That's a big question. All right. From there, let's get back to it and let's talk about the snow side of it. European model. There's the snow, 1 to 2 inches right in through here, maybe a spot of 3. Then we get into when the systems come in the northwest. That's 1 week out on snow. Look at that. Boy, do we need this. What follows that system? Maybe here, maybe some snow here. What about the GFS solution? Well, they at least agree on the Cascades. Big snows here in the Northern Rockies. Heavy snowing through there. But boy, the GFS is getting all excited about slowing that second system down and just bringing in snow into this part of the country, not even there in the European. All right, so what we really need to do is use the ensemble. We've seen the operational runs. Here's the chance of an inch over the next 10 days. And there you go. What follows it is all over here. Chance of 3 inches of snow in the next 10 days. Chance of 6. So there's one corridor here. And there's the Western Mountains, which over a foot, 18 inches. Oh, I love this. 24, 36, 48, bring it. This right here is what can undo. Oh, that was back a year ago, but this is what could undo our issues going on in the Cascade Mountains. I love every bit of that forecast. On the wet and dry side of it, over the next 10 days, the speed of these systems coming off the mountains is why we still see a large area here in the plains that has a higher probability of staying drier. Now, if we can get that system in early March, that March 2nd, 3rd, 4th system actually cut off and slow down, this will be wrong. It will. There'll be much more moisture in this area. So we have to watch out for that carefully. On the wetter side of it, here's who's got the best chance at an inch of liquid out of this. Let's step it up to 2. Need this moisture here. Look how wet the northwest is. That's the chance of 4 inches of liquid and all that stuff that's coming in. Now, what happens beyond that? Well, here's day 7. That trough is the source region for that March 2nd, 3rd. See it there? There is something here. Does it have a better chance at slowing down in this section of the country? I'd say right now, yes. March 3rd and 4th, I think we have a slower low here than the one we've currently got. You say, why? Well, no strong subtropical support for it. So we need that. That's the moisture, the setup for returning moisture to the central United States. And the atmosphere, I just don't think is done. Sends that one through from the 3rd through the 7th, and then there it is again. That's the 8th and 9th, that other one I was telling you about coming through. I like every bit of that, and that's why the week 2 forecasts are now all 3 models kind of moistening up a bit. See how they're getting quite a bit wetter than they were earlier this week. Okay, what do we do with all this from there? Well, let's go, to here and talk about temperatures. This is early this morning what the temperatures are, and I'm paying attention to this guy right here. Out in Canada, we're sending in some much colder air, and that front is going to continue to dive south, and this is where we have our frost potential over the next 7 days. And we're going to watch this map every single day of the forecast going forward into spring. The temperatures today still quite mild, but already look at the high temperatures today up here in northern parts of Minnesota and the UP. Already looking at 20s in some places in the teens. That colder air by Saturday presses farther east, and this is what supports the snow coming into this corridor. But behind it, just a lot of mild air. Sunday into Monday, that's the setup. Look how cold the west goes as the troughs dip in. And we have 90s in Texas, 50s and 60s in the northern plains. Tuesday, that open corridor gets here, 70 in Quad Cities, 63 in Madison. I mean, this is incredible to see this warmth. But behind it, there's a cold shot. There it is Wednesday into Thursday of next week. But already the rebound is happening, and the day 5 through 10 opens up to more warmth while all the coldest air is stored in Alaska And this is what we've got for day 10 through 15. Now, this will be the top thing I'm watching in terms of our temperature pattern. Any high latitude blocking or any change in the MJO, which hasn't changed much, that pokes this cold air out and sends it across North America, we have to watch for that. Right now, though, we don't have evidence of that occurring. Both the GFS, which you just saw, and the European, playing this out there today, 10 through 15, still have the same look overall. If this remains for March, this is active. That turns the jet stream just like that. And that is why our longer range outlooks for March have remained the same. I'm going to show it to you again. This is the analogs for El Niños for March. And that is just classic setup for this. Does the European model suggest that that's going to be the case for precip? It does. Look at the greens being wetter here. This has been a very consistent picture I've been painting for you for a while. What about the temperatures? I mean, doesn't that look exactly like the March analogs? Okay, from here, April. Now, I've told you many times April is nearly impossible to forecast. We just now cast April. But if I use the same years, this is the temperature on the left, and this is the precipitation on the right. I'm showing it to you just to show it to you. I have no idea if this is going to be right. But I will tell you that a lot of this is being driven by El Nino. And speaking of El Nino, you know that we found a year that I think looks most like this year, even though it's not a perfect match, and that's 2016. And if you're curious, in 2016, this is what the temperatures did in the month of April. And if we just go back here, this is what the precipitation did in the month of April. So we're going from 3 inches to 3 inches, -3 to +3. If I get that to load, there we go. That was what April looked like. I'm just giving it to you as a piece of information. I just think it's our closest analog. It's dangerous to use a single year, but it's worth showing. Okay, we just need to finish this up with a bit around the rest of the world. What I'll watch most carefully is the cold air here and here. And what does this do to interact with the deeper trough that's been located here? Because if we can keep enhancing that polar jet, I think what we're going to continue to watch here is how the Western United States continues to drop a piece of it down and rip that off to the north and east. That's what I'll be watching most carefully. But just take note, the only major population center in the northern hemisphere that is cold right now is this part of China. Europe, the US, very mild. Australia, hot. South America, well, let's take a closer look at South America. Over the next 10 days, they're going to rapidly finish harvesting and then planting here. It's going to go back over stormy in parts of northern Argentina. We still see a bit of a drier signal in Buenos Aires. Now, the concern is, does this continue? And the newest update from the European model says March has the risk of delivering drier air that could last into April and May. That has to be watched carefully. Alarm bells aren't going off in my head yet about this, but that will be the thing I'll be keeping an eye on as we progress forward for South America. So thanks for hanging on this longer video on Friday, but hopefully it gives us a lot to digest over the weekend. We take a better look at the longer range next Monday. Have a good one. Thanks.